What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Biblical Hitman. It's your host, Stephen. I'm here with good friend Brad Lail, host of the Awakened podcast. And every time this gentleman comes on the show, we get into the nitty gritty. We get into all the fun stuff. And tonight we're going to get into deep underground military bases and other things pertaining to underground subterranean stuff. But folks, if it's your first time or you're returning, you want to support the show, it's free. Hit that subscribe button. Come on over to YouTube. It's one click away. While you're there, like the show, share it with your friends. Drop a comment as well. All this kind of stuff is the currency that helps the video flow through the algorithms. And you can support us on audio platforms as well. So if you're on the video side, get over to the audio. Support us there too. While you're there, you can smash that follow button. You could also hit that notification button and like the show as well. Drop comments as well. Everything, folks. Everything of all the things. We're everywhere. But Brad, brother, so good to have you back on, man. I enjoy doing shows with you.
Yeah, man, it's good to be back. And for those listening, like I've mentioned this on this show before, I think that those likes and shares and comments, that's kind of the currency of the podcast world. So the more you do that, the more you give reviews, the more our content will be seen in front of others. So it really, really helps out. I know we run ads and stuff like that, and it sucks to have ads and you got to listen to them. But unfortunately, we have to pay for. Like I was just going through my list of things to pay for last night, and I'm not trying to turn this into a business discussion about podcasts or anything, but I was going through my list of how much stuff I pay for every month, and the ads that I run on my show and the ads that Stephen runs on his show is helps supplement some of those costs. It helps offset some of those costs. So anything you could do for us, that kind of stuff really matters. Just liking, sharing, because that gets it in front of more listeners, more viewers, and thus we can make a little bit more money on ads. And believe me, it's not much. It might be $5-10 a day or something like that. So we're not getting rich off of this, but
Right.
But yeah, man, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me again. I like the relationship we're building where we're coming on each other's shows and sharing these topics, because I don't have anybody to bounce ideas off of, but I have a ton of research that I go through. And so, deep underground military bases is one of them. Underground cities is one of them. And so having someone to springboard or to bounce ideas off of is always awesome, man. So I appreciate you coming on my show, and I appreciate the opportunity to come on your show.
Likewise, man. And that's the fun thing about this industry is we get to build relationships, we get to network with each other. And there's honestly a little circle. It's almost like an imaginary circle, but it's there that we all kind of start to build around. And the audience is a big part of that. And folks, real quick, I want to just take a second here to thank each and every one of you folks for tuning in to the shows because it keeps us going. Believe it or not, you girls and guys, right? You are the fuel to help us continue to do what we do. And I think we're in the end of the day, we're doing it for Christ. We're doing it to shed light in these dark areas of the world. And we're trying to use these topics to bring people closer to the truth. And so with that said, man, real quick, if you wouldn't mind, just where can they support you the most?
Yeah, I mean, pretty easy. The awakenedpodcast.com. That you have links to everything on there. Everything goes on Spotify and Apple. I usually just put audio stuff out. I don't usually do video, only because I'm kind of biased against YouTube and all them. They've censored us for many, many years now. And I kind of feel like for me anyways, it's been an uphill battle. It feels like I went on the confessionals with Tony Merkel, and after that, my name pretty much got erased from the internet. And, it's out there, of course, because I'm still doing shows, so it's going to slip through the cracks. But I used to have a job in the military where, I would put, you could do a search on my name and you could find like images that I took because I was a photographer in the Air Force. But now you can't find anything online. You get some guy out of Baylor University. He's a professor, and I doubt a guy from Baylor University has been out on the internet every day for the last year and a half doing podcasts. So you would think that my name would be out there a little bit more. But anyhow, I don't really put out a lot of video stuff. I just do audio. Audio seems to be a pretty loyal audience to me. So, but I do have a ton of content that I will be posting to YouTube pretty soon, so you guys can actually watch some of these episodes that I've been making. I just haven't gotten around to it, and I keep promising everybody I'm going to do it. But for the time being, yes, you can find me at theawakenedpodcast.com, and you can get everything there. So.
Right on, man. Dude, okay, so deep underground civilizations, military bases, the two are going to merge into one this episode. and hopefully we can at least cover 80 to 90% of some of the material. But there's probably still so much more material out there, man. I remember getting into this topic. This had to be years ago when I was I think I'm at the peak of my conspiracy theorist walk, but back then I think I was super super into this stuff more than I am now. I'm more interested in interviewing people. That's why I have the show. But this was something that kind of like, Phil Schneider was someone who was a whistleblower, started to kind of blow the lid off of this. You've got Catherine Fitz, who's been on the Danny Jones podcast, kind of talking about a breakaway civilization. The idea is out there that there's more than we know under the ground. And I don't really know where to start, man. But if you could just kind of take us into the realm of the subterranean.
Well, I think we can start with the definition. So D.U.M.s is deep underground military bases. The D.U.M.s is the acronym that sort of has been floating around online, and they are these massive secret facilities that are believed to operate kind of like underground cities. So there's the kind of tie-in to underground cities as well. Deep underground military bases is different, but they kind of overlap because everything underground is like secret because we don't know about it, right? They are typically hidden beneath mountains and deserts and, in my opinion, national parks. That's what I think all these national forests and national parks are. I think they are cover for deep underground military bases. And the reason I say that is because I grew up in a national forest, and there's all kind of suspicious things going on. Like we used to have in the house that I grew up in, my mom and dad and a lot of people have interacted with weird things. Like they've had unmarked helicopters, they've had weird airplanes. My mom has seen UFOs, and also many people have seen UFOs and orbs and all kind of stuff. There's a video out there online of somebody that put like a mothership they filmed a mothership UFO over where my mom and dad live, or where my mom lives now. My dad passed away, but there's a lot of suspicious activity, and there's tons of evidence out there. There's tons of video out there. Tony has had lots of people on his show, The Confessionals, talking about it as well, how there's always these black ops type vehicles that kind of show up when something is going on, right? You hear loud explosions. I was on the phone with my mom one day, and she heard this like loud boom, and nobody in the neighborhood, we grew up down a dirt road in the middle of the woods, so we kind of know what's going on. And they all heard a loud boom and nobody knew what it was coming from. Well, that's typical of places that are popular to have, these deep underground military facilities. And they are said to be, these self-sustaining structures, I guess you could say, with ecosystems and, artificial lighting and life support. They have these things called magnetic levitation tunnels, also called maglev for short, and they're usually used for classified projects like researching advanced technology, black budget research, which I'm assuming is like UFO stuff, and there is a lot of non-human collaboration, right? And that kind of is the idea that I think is going. I think that our government, or at least portions of our government, and that's why they call it black budget research, is funding. They're working with demonic entities, and they're providing blood sacrifice and things like that in exchange for weapons and technology and all this other stuff. So anytime you hear anything about a deep underground military facility, whether that's, famously, you've probably heard about Cheyenne Mountain out of Colorado. You probably heard about Mount Weather in Virginia, which is a FEMA continuity site. These are all like real places. So I'm trying to give people an idea that deep underground military bases are real. So Cheyenne Mountain, Mount Weather, Raven Rock, which is like the backup Pentagon operations center. It's like a living quarters. It's like fully staffed for 24/7. There's a place called Greenbrier Bunker in West Virginia. And then there's all these nuclear command centers that are typically tied to like strategic command. So those are real. And so when you say deep underground military bases, they're real. But then there are sites that we've heard of, right? Just from like folklore and things like that. And Dulce Base and Area 51, for example, Denver International Airport in Colorado, China Lake, Mount Shasta, the Alaska Black Pyramid, all these places are said to exist, but we don't fully know for sure. Even with Area 51, we know it
Right, right.
exists, but we don't know what goes on there. And of
Yeah,
course, there's
what's
all these.
crazy too, with the Denver airport, that budget started out at 1.5, I believe it was 1.5 billion dollars, and it actually reached a budget of 4.8 billion dollars. So what was going on initially was their budget expanded after they did a lot of the groundbreaking. So how much it actually cost to build the airport was about 1.8 billion dollars of that, and then they expanded the budget after that. And so this is where you get a lot of these theories that maybe they built some sort of underground city underneath it. This is the New World International Airport. And which is funny, there's a Masonic, uh, plate out there saying that this is the New World International Airport. You've got Lucifer out in front. You've got all these murals that are also included inside that seem to have like a dystopian vibe to it. I think this could be a place where the elites do go to, which they have a functioning, structured city underground, to where they have all the systems set up that they would need, right, to support the ecosystem of like how a city does today, right? You got transportation, you got food, beverage, you got, healthcare, you've got all the infrastructure that we have above ground, but they would technically have it underground there. And it kind of resembles a lot to me when I read Revelation chapter 6, and towards the bottom of chapter 6, after that sixth seal, you have the merchants, the captains, the mighty men, the rich men, all of these people that the Bible's describing who are the elites of the world that do run a lot of the things that we use today, that they are going to ask themselves for the mountains and the rocks to hide them from the great and terrible day of the Lamb, which is like this end of the world cataclysm, this wrath of God, right? So I
Yep.
just wanted to throw that in there because it's the Denver airport stuff is just so fascinating to me. I've done a lot of studying on it. I've done a lot of just trying to break down what the murals mean to me, not necessarily what is told to us of the interpretation. But man, I see it being that New World Airport. This is where they're all going to fly in. This is maybe a rendezvous area. If you look at the movie 2012, what did they have? They had something, or even the movie Greenland, right? Like there's this area where there is a rendezvous exfil, if that makes any sense, to go to when these things do pop off. Like not only are the elites building bunkers themselves underneath their properties, deep underground, right? To help it's funny, like they explain to the media what this may be for, and they don't really know what it is for. It's almost like they're not really building it for themselves. Maybe it's funded through taxpayer money. I don't know, or just the corporation's money. But there's even silos that are built underground, and they call them Atlas silos, which is so funny because what do we see that's going to be arriving in November? Projected to be in November is the Three-Eye Atlas, this thing that's coming towards us that looks awkwardly weird. When you're looking into space at it, it just looks like the third encounter or whatever it is, the old movie of the ET movies back in the day, right? It's like a strip of just lights, but yeah, it's all interesting, man.
Yeah, and you mentioned Atlas. I think, just like what you were saying a while ago, I'm not afraid of end of the world type of stuff. We were seeing movies for the past 15, 20 years, movies like Elysium and all these end of the world type of movies where, it's almost like they were trying to condition us for something. And then we've heard over and over 2012 is the time. It was going to be the end of the world. First Y2K, then 2012, and then I've heard the Deagle report of 2025, and I've heard September 2025, and every time we pass these points, these checkpoints, they're always like moving the goalpost back. It's Agenda 2030 now, and it's Atlas 3i is coming at this point, and all this other stuff, and none of it's coming. Okay, if anything is coming, like you said, the wrath of God is coming. All these big billionaires, they keep having these meetings. I remember seeing probably about 5 or 6 years ago, I remember seeing a thread of all these articles where CEOs were quitting and they were selling their companies and they were doing, buying land and bunkers and places like that. Peter Thiel was trying to get citizenship in New Zealand, and New Zealand has one of the highest mountains in the world. So he was trying to build like a private bunker there, but the people of New Zealand rejected it. Thank God. um, Elon Musk went to live on a boat. Zuckerberg, built his reinforced bunker in Hawaii and all these things. I think, like you said, they are hiding from the wrath of God because they've been working with these demonic entities. Personally, that's what I believe.
Right.
I think that they've been getting technology and information and all this stuff from these entities the same way they used to get information from these entities, these fallen angels back in the day. They would go to these portal locations like Stonehenge and Avebury and all these other places, and they would interact with fallen angels at these locations. That's what I honestly believe is going on. So they're not building bunkers because of some end of the world cataclysm from us. They're worried about the wrath of God. They're hiding from the wrath of God and the fallout from those who maybe will be around after the wrath of God, and they're going to come and try to take their resources and stuff like that. So I think this is more of a protection measure for them, not not to say that something in society is going to kill everybody off of the planet or whatever. I think they're more worried about their own souls, because when have they ever done anything caring for anybody else? And you can see that they're kind of, in my opinion, they're kind of flailing right now, and they're going on in the media and they're trying to talk about this, that, and the other. And they're even openly talking about Antichrist and not answering Tucker Carlson's questions with Sam Altman about, do you believe in God and all this stuff? Well, I don't think they can, because I think that they've been working with these entities for so long that they kind of sold their soul in a way. I'm kind of babbling on and on, but I think you hit it right on the nose, man, because everybody's worried about cataclysms and stuff like that. I'm not. They're building cataclysm. They're building bunkers in fear of something that's coming to them, not to us, right? So,
Right. And what's so fascinating too, I did an interview not a couple days ago with Jeremy Ryan Slate, right? So he's a podcaster. He runs Command Your Brand, and he also is like an expert on the Roman Empire. And when I had him on, he got into Augustus, which was an emperor at the time in Rome. And there was a comet that actually was cutting through the sky, and it was pretty visible, and it was actually, stationary not stationary, but it was in the sky for a good amount of time, where the whole entire population could see it. And so he used this comet as propaganda, saying that it was Julius Caesar going into this heavenly realm with the stars, right? And that's what this whole fallen angel narrative does kind of wrap around. It's that they will be like gods. They will rest in these places with the gods. And I think that's one thing why all these emperors, all these leaders around the world throughout history have always believed in this idea of like apotheosis, this deification, where they end up dying, they go and they actually end up going to be with the rest of the gods and in these stars. But that's the culture, and that's the belief, that's the religion of these fallen angels. They want to be your god. They want to make you believe that you're going to their heaven, right? And that's not the truth at the end of the day, man. But just back to the underground military bases. I mean, I think as well, this is where a lot of the money's going. I think this is why the Federal Reserve was created. I think this was the ultimate plan in some sort of way to exploit not only the American people, but a lot of the countries around the world, especially with everything connecting to a central banking system through the International Monetary Fund, all going all the way back to the Bank of International Settlements. These elite families, they've these Babylonian bloodlines, right? Like these people, these families, they think that their genealogy is is superior to ours. I will say this, and it goes all the way back to Genesis 6 events. It goes all the way back to this bloodline, these people, these men of renown, to where they think that they are better than us, and that they should rule over us. And so with the military, bases underground, I think this is where a lot of our money has gone to, pertaining to the construction and the development of these bases. And a lot of the money has gone missing, right? I mean, like, supposedly trillions of dollars have gone missing, right? Like, before we had the 9/11 event, we had, I forget what was his name, Rumsfeld or something like that, talking about $2.3 trillion has gone missing, and they're investigating it in the Pentagon, and then the Pentagon area gets hit by a plane where they were actually investigating these files and stuff. So, um, yeah, man, it's something that I really think is happening.
Yeah, every time you get a little too close to the fire, then there's another distraction. It's
Yeah.
like they wanna like look over here real quick and nothing to see here. Of course, a lot of trillions of dollars going missing. You have to wonder where that goes. So what they do is they create wars to disguise it as like, oh, we're funding all these Raytheon and all these big companies, right? And it's like, yeah, you are funding them, but not for war. You're funding them for these deep underground military, these way more important things that are, wars against demonic entities or working with demonic entities in most cases. I think that they have just tried to scare people into believing, because I don't think, dude. I mean, we saw it with the Jersey drone stuff, right? That was pretty clearly demons that were coming in through the plasma field and turning into plasmoids and then morphing into our reality. And they don't want us to see or to think that they're not in control. Like they want everybody to believe that there's an alien invasion and all this stuff. Aliens don't exist. There's all kind of different names for them, but the government typically calls them, we use alien. They use non-human intelligence and fast walkers and other things. But non-human intelligence it's just pure intelligence coming from outside of this reality, beyond our perception. And it kind of comes into that plasma field and morphs into this reality. So they are non-human intelligence. They are ultra terrestrials, if anything. They're not extraterrestrials. They're not coming from other lands. They're coming from outside of our outside of our perceived reality. Um, you mentioned Atlas 3I, right? The top vertebrae of your spine, the 33rd vertebrae, is the Atlas vertebrae, and it's the moment that you leave that chakra and go into the pineal gland, right? So there's a lot of symbolism that involves that kind of stuff as well. So they might be talking about the end of the world, but not the end of the world for Christians. I think
That
that
that just made me think of, like, this new age of consciousness.
right.
Like this is where humanity is going to go through this alchemical process, this change, and come out with a whole new meaning to life and a whole new understanding as well, right? I think that's too what we're, at least what I'm expecting, when we get full disclosure on this stuff, and we really see these supernatural events taking place, maybe in our lifetime, but definitely in the next generations after us. I don't think it's too far away. I think the technology is just rapidly progressing way too fast for it not to. And I think the technology is assisting with these things wanting to enter into this realm and to habitate here, if that makes any sense, to be the gods like they used to be before the flood. If anyone's gripping what I'm saying, you know.
I do think that I just, it's funny, man, because sometimes when you're involved in putting out content for God, for Jesus, the message of Christ, the message of light and love, it's funny how you will find things in the smallest places that will be like an idea for an episode or something like that. And I was walking my kids around this it's a antique type of store here where I live, and it's really big. And then they have booths, so everybody can rent a booth and just sell your stuff in there. And I went into this one booth, and it had like all this '80s memorabilia and stuff in there, which was really cool. And I was looking at some of the old kids' books, and then on the shelf, sticking out, was this book called The Horde by it was a Masters of the Universe book about He-Man. And it's called The Horde, and it was so funny because I was just talking with Paul Stobbs about the Horde and how they are essentially, you know, hidden. The Horde, if you look at the pictures of the book, it has a lizard man on it, it has a Bigfoot on it, it has all these other things. It has, Skeletor, which is the representation of evil. Then you have He-Man, which is the representation of Christ, right? He's got the Maltese cross on his chest, and he's summoning the power of the light. They're living in Eternia, right? And then Hordak comes from Etheria. So there's this whole idea of two worlds, right? And it actually talks about at the beginning of that book how Earths are splitting. The Earth is splitting, and I think that was sort of a prophetic book in a way, letting us know that there is a new Earth coming. Actually, the Bible talks about new Earth as well, right? And I think the new Earth is a vibration. You're kind of vibrating into this. It's a splitting of Earths. So it would almost be like if you looked in my mind anyways, if you looked under a microscope and you see two cells splitting kind of thing, the one cell still exists, but they keep kind of splitting into another one and into another one. Well, I think we're in an age of authenticity right now where people want truth, and truth only comes from source. It comes from God. It comes from the light, knowing the light. And I think that's what's happening, man. We're vibrating into a new earth, a new consciousness where, you know, everybody just woke up in 2020, man. And for me, 2020 was, we've heard the saying our whole life, hindsight 2020, right? For me, 2020 was that moment that everybody it was an explosion of like, everybody started to wake up. People that I'm family and friends with were asking questions, and they were wanting to know more. Everybody's wanting to get back into, going back to church and getting back into closer to Christ and reading the Bible more and growing your own food and all this other stuff. And so for me, hindsight 2020 means that's when we started to, we're starting to bifurcate. We're starting to split and to leave the old earth behind. And I think what we're leaving behind is the not good people, right? In the new earth, it's going to be love and light and authenticity and truth and friendship and kindness, and there's not going to be killing, and there's not going to be, hopefully that's what happens on new earth, right?
It's like no more sin.
Yeah, no more sin, no more everybody, you just trust everybody, because it just right now it feels like there is at that tear moment, there's a lot of trouble. There's political assassination. There's killing on subways and trains and what have you. And all of that sort of magnified to make us think that there's more going on than what it is. But I actually believe that we're going through a period of upheaval right now, and they don't want to lose that power. The demonic forces don't want to lose that power, and they're kicking and screaming, and they're doing everything they can. But every time they do something, it's like with the assassination of Charlie Kirk, for example, every time they do something like that, it grows, the light grows brighter, right? More people go, okay, I'm done with this. And more people become, I don't want to say radicalized, and it's not radicalized, but it's like you become evangelized, I guess you could say. You're like, okay, I now want to do something. Now I want to spread the message of Christ. Now I want to talk about the Bible. Now I want to get my kids in the church more. And so I think with everything that they do, it's like they're amplifying it even more, and they're kind of making us grow further and further apart. A literal divide is happening. So
yeah, it's crazy, man.
Yeah, and I think I still think that they're working with these demonic forces in these deep underground bases and stuff like that for UFO engineering and gene extraction and surgical experiments and hybrid programs, because those hybrid programs, they're trying to get those entities to live in this reality, because God's light disperses them. So when they come up, that's why they're underground. That's why they're underneath the oceans, because when they come out during the day, they disperse because God's light, the sun, disperses them because they are etheric and they can only exist when the sun is not out. That's why they come out at night. That's why you have all these abductions. That's why they live in caves and all this other stuff.
Yeah, you
Is
know what movie makes me think of underground military bases that are also working on some sort of hybrid, right? Experiments is the movie Cabin in the Woods. And so in this movie Cabin in the Woods, you had you had this area that was basically like secured, protected, and contained, right? So this is like SCP idea of things, which is it is a fake thing, the SCP, but it's kind of fun when you actually look at all the different SCP entities or whatever. They're mind-boggling, and they're actually like hilarious. Like there's a book that'll kill you if you don't read it or something. It's like it's hilarious like that. But in the movie, they were actually experimenting with these ancient phenomenons, or these hybrid things that they had captured that were a part of Earth, and they would release it onto people that would stay in this cabin. But it was all for a ritual. It was all to satisfy the God that is deep, deep, deep down within, which to me is like Satan, Lucifer, the devil, whatever. And and in that movie, there's even like a dome in that movie, which is like, kind of loose, like the flat Earth kind of idea. Um, but I think that that's why they're doing these things underground, is because these are experiments that the public cannot digest. And they don't want them to even know that they're real because they're completely unethical. And it's a part of the agenda that what may be coming in the future, who knows? And it makes me think, like, are they trying to build out, are they the ones that are building out these gray aliens? Are they the ones that are building out these vessels for maybe entities to inhabit, if that makes any sense? We know that demons, aka the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, the one thing that demons really crave, and we could see it in scripture, is that they crave human flesh, or they crave any kind of flesh. We've seen it in stories pertaining to when Jesus casted out the legion out of the man. They begged Christ to please cast us out into the pigs. Don't cast us out just into the dry places, but please cast us into the pigs. And I think that also these spirits, because he even talks about it in Job. I'll try and find the scripture here after I get done rambling. But it talks about that these spirits, they inhabit the abyss. Like they come from underwater as well. So I don't only think that a lot of weird things are happening subterranean, but I think they're happening as well in the water, and that's another whole subject. Um, but what's your take with like the underground civilization aspect of this, the breakaway civilization? Like we've heard of this idea. I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, first of all, I want to go back to what you were just saying. Like
Yeah, yeah,
the demons need resting places, right? They get no rest. You remember Jesus was talking about when you cast a demon out, they go and they find no rest. And so if you don't
right.
fill your house with light and love, then they will come back 7 times and inhabit your house. They will come back 7 times stronger and inhabit your house. So I think that these demons are either trying to find resting places. And so they're working underground in these underground bases to create hybrids that they can put their disembodied entities into to where they can find rest. And I think when you see grays and all that stuff, I think that they are they're like remote controls, if you will. They're being controlled beyond our perception. So they're not really, when you see those things. Now the demonic stuff is like the when they inhabit a person's body who's maybe an alcoholic, or you know, somebody that like Jeffrey Dahmer who does bad things, like they are really inhabiting bodies, but you have to let them in, right? It's like just the same way you got to let Christ in your heart. You can let those things in too, but you have to tell them to get out. You have to provide a spiritual barrier around your body. You have to pray for that And just like Vicky Joy Anderson says, you have to close the doors behind you, you know what I mean? And then,
Yeah.
and and then like Christ said, like it said, fill it with light and love and things like that. That way they can't come back in. And so if everybody was talking about light and love and truth and authenticity and all these things, then where can they rest? So they need to keep putting propaganda out in the media to make people in fear and anxiety and all this other stuff, because people who are low, who are in fear and anxiety, they have low vibrations, and low vibrations are a pretty close match for them to just jump on. So again, we exist in this visible light, this perfect temperature, and they exist in this long, slow, cold temperature. And right where so fear and anger and all that stuff, that vibrates at a low frequency, a low hertz. So it's like 4 hertz, 8 hertz, right? Well, if it butts up right against the radio waves, in the infrared waves and stuff like that, then that's where these demonic entities live, and they can attach themselves onto our bodies. So anyways, long story short, we've talked about it before, I think you and I, where what's his name, L.A. Marzulli has talked about as well, the bovine, taking reproductive organs and stuff like that. That's why I think they're exsanguinating cows and taking their reproductive organs to try to grow hybrids, and they're doing it all in these underground bases, right? And Dulce Base in
New
which is
Mexico,
beneath
right?
in New Mexico, is beneath the Archuleta Mesa in New Mexico. And it's a joint government slash gray slash reptoid facility, allegedly, right? And it's connected by these maglev tunnels to Los Alamos, and to Area 51 and all these other places. And they have different levels, right? There's like 7 levels, and the first level is like security and admin, and you need like retina scans and voice things and all these other biometrics to get in. Levels 3 through 4 is like these psychic, metaphysical research areas, like where dream mapping happens and remote viewing and all this stuff. Like you get taught how to do all this stuff there. It's like telepathic communication and stuff like that. Level 5 is like the alien headquarters. This is where these things sort of reside at. And then there's like a level 6, which is called the nightmare hell, which is like genetic labs and these chimeras and these failed hybrids and all this stuff. So this is kind of like you remember the movie Toy Story, where they had all those toys with these parts connected to them. That's kind of what the image that's
Yeah.
being painted about level 6. And then level 7 is the final level of it, allegedly, is these cryogenics, and it's a soul storage area. And this is where guys like gosh, what's his name? I can never Bob Lazar has talked about how they are just using our vessels as for soul harvesting our vessels. I don't know how to explain that, but that's exactly what I think is happening. I think they are creating like these NPCs there. And I've talked about it on other shows, and I'm sorry if it sounds dehumanizing. I'm not trying to dehumanize anybody, but I do believe that they are creating vessels without souls, if you will. And I think that there are a lot of humans that walk the earth that are just empty vessels, if you will. They just exist as kind of like background
Oh,
extras, right?
dude, you know what you're making me think of? You're making me think of the movie The Island. And so the
Yes.
movie The Island with Ewan McGregor and Scarlett Johansson, in the movie, basically when they make their way from underground to above ground, they're realizing that they've been part of some sort of cloning project. And when they're talking to one of the electricians that was working on the underground area, that Ewan McGregor, the clone Ewan McGregor, was ran into him. He found him on the surface world, and you know that guy was basically telling McGregor that that you're just different. You're not like me. You're not like us. And the guy was like, you don't have a soul. Pretty much like what you're saying. And again, that's why I think they do kind of put some things in movies. They just kind of flash it in front of you.
Yeah,
That's just what they
revelation
do.
of method, dude. That's all it is revelation of method, for sure. There was something I was watching earlier. I was thinking about revelation of method. I think I turned on the Lazarus Project, and the first scene, it was like new pandemic hits and as soon as I saw it, I turned it off. I was like, this propaganda is trying to make us think that there's another. They're trying to convince us to manifest another pandemic. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
like
I know.
it's not going to work. Everybody is sort of disillusioned by it now. We don't think of it or care about it anymore. You can't trick us anymore like that. Unfortunately, they still have a grip on society through the media, and they know that, and they're going to keep pushing anger and fear. Dude, why did they show the stabbing on that train? Why did they show
I
that?
know.
And why did they show the assassination of Charlie Kirk? Why was that immediately not taken off all of the web and the internet and all that stuff? They still let it be shown. Why? And to me, it's because they are trying to um they're trying to get us to stay in that fear base, right? Like, we don't want to see that. What we want to see is Epstein lists and all these other things. They show us all the people who are trafficking children and all that stuff. Point those people out if you have the power to do that. But they would rather censor that information and take it offline, and then put the killing of innocent people on. Like, it's all to get you in a state of fear and anxiety and panic and anger and all this other stuff. And so when we watch that kind of stuff, we have to learn to control our emotions, because if we don't get control of them, they are going to own us. Anybody who says, Stephen, if anybody says you're ugly or you got glasses, you suck or whatever, and you believe it and you let that affect you, that means that they own you. That means that you are their slave and they can control you in whatever way they want. And that's the same way that they're doing with us whenever they put this propaganda out. They have a whole department in the United States government, a whole branch of the government, well, that works through the executive branch, that is designed to put propaganda out. They have 10,000 employees who work for the U.S. Agency for Global Media. Actually, the U.S. Agency for Global Media has about 1,000, but they work under the State Department, kind of, right? And the State Department is worldwide. And the State Department's job is essentially to propagandize foreign media. In 2012, Obama changed it to where you included he changed the Smith-Mundt Act of 1947, which said that we could propagandize people overseas. Well, then he changed that to include in 2012 the internet. And so what that meant, what it all boils down to, is he gave the U.S. government permission to propagandize its own citizens. That means that the U.S. government can write propaganda, create memes, they can create videos, they can have podcasters and all this stuff that creates lies, okay? And they can put it out there. The only distinction is that they can't just give it to the New York Times, or they can't just give it to Google or whoever they want to give it to. They put it out there, and then they let these companies know that they have it. These companies then request it, and it's like they're cleaning themselves. I forgot the word of it, the word that you call it, but it's like they are clearing themselves of the lawsuits and all this stuff. So essentially, if you and I have a media company, we can contact the government and say, I would like the propaganda that you made for the war going on in Ukraine, and they would give it to us, and then we would put it out on our platform. That's what they legalized. So the government isn't directly propagandizing us. They are doing it through proxies and stuff like that. And this is what happened with the Twitter files and all this, right? This is why the Twitter files came out, and you're like, oh my God, they're doing all this. This is why, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about with YouTube and the censorship and stuff like that. And I don't think it's by any fault of these media companies, really, because I think what happens is the government puts pressure on them. By the way, I know we've taken this into a different direction. I'll bring it back. But the government puts pressure on them to do what they want, or they won't get any government grants, or they won't approve certain antitrust laws and different things that approves mergers and all this other stuff. So they have to kind of play ball. But I say all that because it's an information war. It really is an information war, and it's been going on for a long time now. And what we're starting to uncover, and the reason why they're doing all this disclosure and all this other stuff, is not because they care about us and want us to know. we are getting to a point where we're like fed up with it, and they realize that the collective consciousness will penetrate that eventually, and what everything that's done in the dark will be brought to light. And so there is no more
Amen.
fakery. There is no more lies that they can't deceive us anymore, right? We're getting to the point where we're starting to quickly realize who's telling us the truth and who's not. And I think the media plays an important role too, because when we look at Instagram and Facebook and all this stuff, what are we able to do very quickly now? When you and I watch a clip, we can easily see when it's AI. We can easily see when it's like staged or something like that. So we're quickly learning of how things are being deceived. You know, it served a really good purpose having all this media, having all this social media. I know it sucked for 20 years, but in the end, I think it's going to work in our favor because it has taught us how to see the darkness for what it really is. Like we are starting to see the deception. I mean, immediately with the Charlie Kirk stuff, they immediately went everybody immediately went, something's off. And typically that took 60 years for them to do that with JFK. That took 25 years to do that with the 9/11 stuff, or at least, 8 years with the 9/11 stuff. So I say all that because I think that there's an agenda to work with, they are working with these dark demonic entities, and their time is coming up. And fortunately for us, we're on the right side of history, and we're on the side of light. And all they will scatter like roaches when you cut the lights on, right? That's all that's going to happen.
Right.
And that's what they're in fear of, and that's why they're building these breakaway civilizations and all this stuff, which we can get into. I know that was your question about 10 minutes ago, and I kind of went on this rant. So
No, it's great, man. And listen, the audience loves it, man. They love you, man. They love the show. We're here. That's why we're different. That's why we get into these deep thoughts, man, because they all end up bringing us back to the concept that the foundation of what we're kind of discussing. And you were getting into that they're building fear, right? And I think that's one reason why they want these hybrids or these civilizations to emerge one day on the surface level to just bring even more fear, right? Or even to play along with the disclosure event, and to it could be all wrapped up in a lot of propaganda, but I think the ultimate goal is that they want to control us. But they they're working on controlling our minds right now, and that's through entertainment, that's through propaganda, that's through social media. And I think that's what we do differently on our platforms a little bit to kind of stab at, the big guy, uh, at the, to disrupt the agenda oh so slightly. I think that's why there's censorship. I think that's why, maybe in the future we may or may not have a platform to speak. And I think a lot of that kind of stuff, a lot of those things only happen because of how they bring a reaction to the people. And so with the Kirk stuff and with everything else, I think that they're manipulating the emotions, and they're manipulating the reaction of the people right now, because it is a really crazy, awful thing to see. Again, I don't know why that video was circulating like it did on the internet. We're talking about, just one user's account would get 11 something million hits, and we're talking about thousands and thousands of users that were sharing this video. And if you could do that math, pretty much every American and people around the world at that point were probably seeing what they saw. And it really changed. It changed the game a lot. It brought in a lot of fear in the people, but I think it also brought in a lot of commotion and discourse, not discourse, but just schism between people and their opinions. And I think that they want to bring some sort of civil war event. And I think a lot of this just wraps back into the topic we're getting into, because I think the only thing that is going to bring the world together is either this UFO disclosure, which could, incorporate the underground military bases that are working on the underground civilizations to one day, if these things do kind of Men in Black, walk amongst us in some sort of uh, fashion, that this is something that maybe initially would impose a threat, but also bring but secondary to that, it would bring the world together into a new world idea, right? Like this whole new world order. You've got Reagan talking about it, back in, I forget, was it like the 80s or something? I could be wrong, but anyways, it was back in the day. He was explaining to the United Nations that the one opposing threat that all of the nations would come together on is a threat from an out of this world event. So with this said, I think this could be an idea. It could be part of the agenda, the plan to bring the world together. At the end of the day, I think that is what they've been talking about. I mean, Bush Sr.'s been talking about it. Even during the times of 2019 to through 2022, even the news medias were talking about it. The understanding of a new world order is old now. People should be at least understanding to the term nowadays. And that new world order doesn't necessarily mean that there would be a new lineup of nations, like who's first, second, third, whatever. But it's literally going to be a one world government, a one world religion, and a one world currency. Um, and so I think, the topic that we're getting into is going to just play into all of that.
Mhm. Yeah, and in the back of the dollar bill it says the birth of a new world, I believe, and that was passed in 1933, right? By the 32nd president, who became the 33rd president, Dwight Eisenhower. So I'm sorry, not Dwight Eisenhower, FDR. And so FDR was the 32nd president. Remember, he served an additional 4 years. So that technically made him the 33rd president. He was a 33rd degree Mason. And why is the pyramid on the back of the dollar bill? Well, the pyramid is a place where, in all these stone circles and passage mounds and dolmens and all this stuff, standing stones, they are places where people used to go to get information from fallen entities. And I think you and I have talked about this before. And that eye, that all-seeing eye, is a watcher. And I believe it says the birth of a new world, the Seclurus Odum, or whatever it is. I don't remember
It's Latin. It's all you
yeah,
need to know.
that's Latin. Yeah, but it does say new world, the
It
birth
does.
of a
Yeah.
new
Yeah.
world order. And so the purpose, I think, again, is the people who are getting information. It's like the book Atlas Shrugged, right, by Ayn Rand. Back in, she wrote it in like 1957. And it's the idea that these innovators, these people who are creating and innovating in society, are escaping a crumbling world, right? Now they're not talking about like UFO technology and all this stuff, but this is sort of how these elites see themselves. And by the way, I just had Gary Wayne on my show, and he was talking about the L-ites. So
Hmm.
anytime you see ites or like royals, the royals,
Hmm.
that's a sign that they are from the bloodline of the serpent seed, right?
Hmm.
I hope I'm not misquoting him, but I think that's what he
No,
said.
yeah, and he gets, and that's
Yeah,
why there is this bloodline, these families that think that they have the right to rule,
right.
right?
And because they continue to work in those mystery schools and the dark arts and the black magics and stuff like that, because they continue to offer up sacrifices, like um, the WikiLeaks files. The reason why Julian Assange was buried underneath the jail for something like just that's something that we're supposed to be able to do, freedom of speech and freedom of the press and all this other stuff that we're supposed to be able to do. But he was just a journalist, and they put him in jail for so long and pretty much ruined his life. And I'm sure he's got all kind of gag orders and all this stuff. But you know why they did that is because a lot of those emails revealed a lot of things, and people didn't read through them. Like, we've heard about them, but we haven't read through them. And I've read through some of them. And then you have people like John Podesta talking about non-human entities. You have people like Cheryl Mills from Hillary Clinton's staff exchanging emails talking about sacrificing a chicken to Moloch and all this stuff. So I think that they are still working with these dark forces by making sacrifices. And
Dude, picture this. How about Dolly Parton cheersing with her other celebrity girlfriends to the god Azel?
dude,
Let's just go. Come on, man.
yeah, and
Come
they have
on.
to, but in order to get that, you have to give up something in life, and I think that
I think so.
If
I think the Bible talks about it. So I don't mean to cut you off,
yeah,
but I think the
no,
Bible
you're right.
shows you exactly kind of how the devil works, what the protocol is that he initiates on people if they do want to inherit a lot of these things of the world. He did it to Christ, right? He did it to Christ in the desert for 40 days. He not only tempted him of all different types of things, food, controlling the temple and all this, whatever, but also the kingdoms of the world. Like he has a lot of things to offer. He is the god or the prince of this place.
Yes.
And he has a lot of things to that he runs here. He runs the infrastructure. So he can give you what it is you want, what the flesh wants, right? What our hearts kind of desire in this reality and what our minds think, but we're sinful people. So our natural order of things is already messed up. But that's where he doesn't want you to understand that the way you think and what's dwelling in your heart would be naturally deceitful. He wants to bring you into the trap where the door closes behind you and it's already kind of too late. Like and what I compare with that trap as well is the lights are on, but until that door closes behind you, the lights shut off. You can't find the door again. There's nowhere you are disoriented. You don't know how to find how you got into this place, and therefore you're stuck. And I think that's why a lot of these celebrities and a lot of these people, when they do get involved in these things and these groups and these secret societies, they start to go a little crazy when they do try to find the way out. And not that they all are crazy, but I think it's just, man, it's a hard spot to come out of. I think you can unplug at some point in time because God's in control of all the souls. It don't matter. The devil can deceive you however he wants, but there is revival. There is redemption after any kind of mistakes or decisions you've made in your life. So yeah, I just wanted to add that in there.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right, man. And you mentioned Dr. Or not Dr. It was just Catherine Austin Fitz, right? I saw an interview where she was talking with Tucker and how she used to work for the Bush administration, and she was talking about how they slowly drip money, they transfer money from one side to the other, like from the U.S. government to this breakaway society to build these, like 170 underground um, cities and underground bases and underseas bases and all this other stuff, and how they're like connected by these different transport systems and stuff like that. And we've kind of heard about this. And then going back to what I said at the beginning, how my mom heard this loud explosion. Well, that's not atypical for people who live in mountainous areas, right? That are near like we talked about Cheyenne Mountain and other places. There are also oh God, what's there's Mount Shasta, right? And there's a alleged Lemurian city over there. There's the ant hill, what's called the ant hill in California. I forgot where it's located out, but it's like the Chichichapapi Mountains or something like that. I can't never remember the name. It's like a Native American name.
Yeah.
But a lot of these places have large, you hear explosions going off all the time around there. There's a base in North Carolina. Matter of fact, I'm going to be having a lady named Mary Joyce on my show. I believe she's been on the Confessionals and Blurry Creatures as well. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that she's talking about something similar that's happened in North Carolina with these loud explosions and stuff like that going on. But I think that they're constantly working underground to, again, this is a self-preservation thing. They think highly of themselves because they got this information from these fallen angels, right? They've gotten, think about technology and all this stuff. All of a sudden, everybody, you get the boom of information of computers and all this other stuff, technology and cell phones and all this stuff, and it's coming at us at a faster pace. Well, I think that we've seen this all before. I think this is what happened in Genesis 6. This is the reason why God flooded the world, because there was so much of this going on. There was so much forbidden knowledge that these people had gotten that they weren't supposed to have, that they
Right.
didn't attain on their own. And I think that was, they were eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That was the
Right.
forbidden fruit,
Right.
was accessing this information from these fallen angels. And so, Yeah, again, I just think that they are working overtime to break away because they think of themselves as like these high-minded people that are, they come to this on their own, and we're just peons and they don't need us and all this other stuff.
Well,
So
it's
yeah,
like in the movie, it's like Elysium, right? They want to separate themselves from us in some sort of way, because they're uh, the Elohim of the humans, if that makes any sense. Like these bloodlines, right? They want to be the gods of over us. And it's so funny because I had Jeremy Ryan Slade on, and he talks about how the emperors and the kings of the world have always compared themselves with the gods. They've always named themselves the sons of God, of God, right? Which is so funny because they're trying to make a connection there with these beings. And I think that's why they're trying to bring the old world into the new. They can only do it in a certain way because I think it's not time yet for these the same antediluvian period to be revisited, in the end, right? That's why Jesus talks about how, in those days, which he's talking about the latter times, he's talking about the end, that last generation that is to be, in the times of the end. And that those days would be like the days of Noah. So he's kind of like saying, I think how the fallen angels look at this is that they have one more chance. They have one more chance to come back here, and it's almost like they have one strike left in the count. But real quick, man, I want you to hold your thought, folks. We're going to take just a 1 minute break or so. I have to use the restroom, so
all right.
we'll take a quick little break, and we'll be right back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Hey, bro, sorry to cut you off like that, but oh my goodness, I was
Well,
about to
that's
pee
okay.
on myself.
That's all right, man.
But
I was just gonna say though a while ago, because before I lose my train of thought, if you don't mind if I just jump in, um, I think this has happened before. I think that when God flooded the earth, He washed away all these portal locations, these places like the Stonehenges and the Aveberries and the um, what is the place called? The place in Turkey. Gosh, dang it, I lost my train of thought on
oh
that.
yes,
But
Göbekli Tepe.
Göbekli Tepe. Yeah, I'm sorry. And Karahan Tepe. I lived in Turkey. That's why I'm like, what in the world am I thinking? Like,
What?
yeah, I used to live there. I used to be stationed there. And so I've been to places like Derinkuyu, which is in Turkey, which is this underground. I'm sure everybody's seen it's like these cave systems throughout the mountains. It's like 200 feet of homes and churches and food storages and stuff like that. And it was alleged to be for like this survival shelter, but I don't think that's what it was. I think that I think that you know the flood really did happen and it washed all this stuff away. And I think some of these places are still underground, and so some of these places are just being re-inhabited and reused for these types of things that are going on, right? So, but there's all kind of different. I mean, we're kind of jumping around between cities and underground bases, and there's a famous there's a famous story about a guy named Warren Schufelt out of Los Angeles, and in 1933 he claimed to have discovered a subterranean city um, underneath LA that was allegedly built by these lizard people, right? And he was using this X-ray, um, some sort of a radio X-ray to um, persuade officials to sort of let him dig, but no evidence had ever surfaced. However, people always talk about, and they still talk about, I saw a guy who allegedly worked at Starbucks who talks about these underground travel systems in LA that still exist. So there is there are for real places that people allege, I'm sorry, there are places that people allege, but there are for real places as well. There's an underground city in Seattle that a lot of people don't know about, and it was created after the allegedly after the Great Fire of 1889. So there are so the city of Seattle was built on top of that essentially. So there are places that are real. I'm sorry, I kind of fumbled through that, but I'm getting my places kind of crossed up a little bit because I'm like, which place was real,
You
which
know
place
too
wasn't.
much,
Yeah,
Brad. You know too much.
but I think that these places are these city, and there's one in I think there's one in Atlanta too. There's another underground city in Atlanta So there's these places are all over the place, and they still exist. And if you look at it, if you look at the pictures of the one in Seattle, it's a city. It's got like street lights and stuff. So why would they build a city on top of a city? It doesn't make any sense. So again, I think it's just remnants from an older civilization that existed before the flood. And you can call that Atlantean civilization or Lemurian civilization or whatever civilization you want to call it. But I think that they were getting information and technology from fallen angels the same way that we are. And I think part of there's a document, a CIA document that was re-released. It was a book written called The Story of Adam and Eve, I believe. I could be wrong about the title, but it's something along those lines. A guy wrote a book, and it was talking about how floods and all this stuff happen on a regular basis. And the CIA basically classified it for like 60 years, and then it became declassified information. So these stories of floods happening over and over are real, and it's tied into the Bible, but they're not wanting us to know that. So I think that they are getting advanced knowledge that something might be coming, but I don't think it's going to be a flood again. I mean, the Bible talks about that, but I think that something is coming, some sort of a big event, and that's exactly what they're calling it. That's what all these big tech people are getting together, and that's what they're calling it. I read that article a while back, and I wish I had it still, but I usually save things like that because I know they'll end up disappearing. But the article was saying something like that. The guy who wrote the article went out there. He was like a tech journalist, and he got together with all these CEOs, and they called him into this conference room, and they just started saying stuff about this big event. And he kept saying, like, what is the big event? What does this mean? And they kept kind of laughing at him. So it was like they knew, they had this advanced knowledge of something that's coming, right? So I don't think that they can predict the future, but I do think that they kind of can control events to make things happen. And I think you see that. I think you see them trying to sacrifice things more. You see them, you see that with all the wars in the Middle East. They all make sacrifices to their fallen angels, to the 33%, in the name of 33. So they do it on the 33rd parallel. They do it through sacrificing famous people. The bigger the celebrity, the more star power they have. I think Kobe Bryant, for example, was his plane crashed in LA, which is on the 33rd parallel. You got Marilyn Monroe and all these other people who have been John F. Kennedy, who have been assassinated on the 33rd parallel. So I think that they are sacrificing to their fallen angels. And the bigger those sacrifices are, the more they're trying to bring something about. They don't want population. They want population control. They don't want humans on Earth anymore because we're the ones who are made in God's image, right? So they don't want us around. So every agenda, every political agenda you see out there, whether that's immigration or abortion or what have you, all of it is a depopulation agenda set by the devil. He doesn't want more people. He wants more hybrids and stuff and rebrids and all these other things that they're doing in these underground bases. And again, we can get into that if you want, which
let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, this is why they're after people with Rh negative bloodlines, because those Rh negative bloodlines are better matches for their agenda. So they have these synthetic bovine wombs, which I talked about earlier. They have plasma baths, which is, it's kind of like, I don't remember if it was, what was the movie with Travis Walton, which, by the way, was on the 33rd parallel. What was the movie? Was it
Something
Eye in the Sky?
right?
Yeah, I can't remember. Fire in the Sky, maybe?
Fire in the Sky, yeah. I think it was.
I can't remember if it was that movie or another abduction movie that I saw where he said he saw all these people's bodies in these plasma baths or these like green tanks, and they were just empty vessels almost. They were just kind of, it looked like they were manufacturing people, essentially, is what it was. But I think that's what that's about. And I think that they have electromagnetic resonance and plasma fields that move consciousness into clones, right? They're doing this in these underground bases. They have hive mind entities. They're creating enhanced hybrids. They're creating multi-limb beings. I mean, we kind of see this with all these cryptids and stuff. When we talk to people, everybody's always talking about Dog Man and all these other crazy golem-like creatures that crawl around and all this stuff. I think this is what you're getting because they're trying to create humans to inhabit this earth. And what happens is they provide an area for them, like the national forest, to kind of they're called the horde. Essentially, they kind of store them there. This is where they can live and kind of do their thing without being detected. And I think that that's what national forests are. They kind of rope them off to where we can't see them or access them or anything like that. But I think that they do occasionally like feed them still. They give them sacrifices and things like that. So just to appease them so they don't go and start attacking like neighborhoods and all this stuff. But I think occasionally that does come through. And again, time and time again, every time you see some sort of a event, or at least you've heard about some sort of event like the Mothman or something, you always have like FBI agents showing up and CIA and all these unmarked vehicles and all this other stuff. So I think that they all know what's going on. Like this separate government. I don't think it's all government. I think it's like a separate government that's working with like this black budget, like we talked about earlier.
Hmm. I
And
wanted to, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, go ahead, man. I was
Oh,
gonna
so
ley lines, by the way, enhance all of this. Ley lines. The reason why all this stuff happens at ley lines is because ley lines are like this. It connects two nodes essentially. So if there's a Stonehenge or a stone circle that's a portal location, a ley line will connect to another portal location. And I think that they always have these deep underground military bases near these portal locations to sort of amplify their energy and help stabilize portals and all this other stuff, right?
yeah, it makes me think too. Like, so if we're talking about the Great Deluge, right? This flood that took place where God kind of wiped everything and reset everything, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't still exist. It just kind of in my understanding or how I interpret these things is that it's just been covered up. Right. So a lot of these places, a lot of these ancient places of ritual, sorcery, and this mystical practice of the ancient religion, that it's just ready, it's being prepared in some way, or it's wanting to be revealed again. And I think when I've at least when I've read in Serge Manask's in his Project Bluebeam disclosure, he gets into that it's a four-stage process, and that number one, there's like engineered earthquakes, right? So these are like man manipulated earthquakes. But here's the thing: I don't think everyone gets the story entirely right, but I think that they're like they're they're registering or at least getting something out there that could be true. It's just maybe he got something slightly wrong with it. But anyways, it could go both ways. What I'm saying is I think these things could be actually man-made engineered, like pertaining to earthquakes, or it could just be naturally occurring events to where these earthquakes then reveal certain things that have been buried from the flood, right? So, because you have a lot of archaeological sites that not only do man uncover, but natural Mother Earth events also reveal these things as well. And so, if you have the loosening of the soil and the breaking of the ground from earthquakes, it just makes me think of a bunch of different movies out there. But what if we have pyramids starting to uprise from out of the ground? What if we have technology that we start to dust off because we've now seen that there's something there because the soil has been loosened enough and it's revealed to be something of ancient civilizations. And so it makes me think that this is something that will move us closer towards a new religion pertaining to the ancient just texts that we get from civilizations. The Sumerian tablets, right? The Anunnaki narrative and the story of that. Because I think that's why I think these fallen angels, they know what they don't have to they don't have their understanding of things is completely different than ours, right? They're a part of a different dimension. Therefore, I think they have the ability to know what's coming in the future. Therefore, in the past, they could set things in place for future events. So, if they're controlling the narrative before the Great Deluge and everything got reset, I still think they could do certain things before the flood, which is come up with this, uh, pantheon of gods narrative to get the people to worship them in some sort of way, so that in the future, when people are disconnected from that idea and then these events happen, they'll be re-brought back into that mystery Babylon, if that makes any sense. And pertaining to a lot of these catastrophic events that I think some of the elites are worried about and whatever, I think that it explains it in Revelation. I think these are the vials. I think these are the trumpets. I think these are these acts of wrath from God. And who knows? Maybe it could actually be like wrath from God, right? In the perspective that way. But I also think maybe it could just be natural events that are taking place that are still an act from God, but it's just that this is how we perceive it. Like for example, you've got the first trump, which is the hail and fire, right? That is casted upon the earth. You've got the second trump, which is like the mountain casted into the sea, uh, so on and so forth. But these could be actual, things that we could break down into how we would naturally see it, like an asteroid coming to Earth in that form or whatever. But it doesn't have to necessarily be like a mounted casted into the sea or a star in this way, shape or form. I think it could be interpreted like how we actually would see these things. And it's so funny because the vials actually like maybe resemble like like a nuclear climate after all this stuff to go down. Um, yeah, done rambling with all that. Oh, you're muted, brother.
Sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah, I think you're right, man. And what I think is going on when we look at political appointments by the president of the United States, two of the most important appointments, which are always like you never hear anything about, is the Department of Interior and the Department of Energy. Both of those appointments are incredibly important because the Department of Interior, they control the national parks and all that stuff. So they know everything that's going on with all of that. They know all about, you talking about pyramids and all this stuff, right? That are kind of showing up. They know about all these places. Department of Energy, they are the ones that are, working with, Rand and EG&G and SAIC and Betchel and all these things to work, to fund and do research in these underground facilities. They're the ones who are funding projects like creating the grays, right? The telepathic grays, and they're doing the reptoid hybrids, and they're doing the human hybrids, which are hybrids. Again, all these things are like the hybrids, I would say, are like NPCs. But my point is that the Department of Energy and Department of Interior are the most important appointments, and they usually have to have top secret classifications above top secret and all that stuff that nobody pays attention to them, and they get budgets. I mean, I remember a while back the Department of Energy had like a big ammunition budget, and it was like bigger than the Department of Defense or something like that. And it's like, what do they need all the ammunition for? I believe that was when Obama was president. So we have to be very mindful of all of these different things, because while they're getting us distracted with like who's going to be the Secretary of State and all that stuff, I don't think that really matters. I think what really matters is what I just said. And typically those appointments are, somebody that's not really good friends with the president or anybody. They're usually people who come up like in South Carolina. We have, I don't know if it's like this in every state, but in South Carolina we have this thing called Palmetto Boy State, where they kind of groom people to be politicians their whole life, right? They kind of like, it's like they pick people from these, what are the smart programs called for kids at school? I forgot.
Oh,
The gifted and talented.
right.
Yeah, the gifted and talented programs. And then they kind of pick these kids to go, and essentially they teach them how to be like country club type people, where they schmooze people, they become lawyers, so they're kind of groomed by the system. And those are the kind of appointments that they typically have for Department of Energy and Department of Interior and places like that. So
Well, how about the Forum of Young Global Leaders, right? Or Young Global Leaders of Tomorrow, which is a school that, Klaus Schwab and a bunch of other elites fund and, contribute to the world, where these young leaders, they kind of build them up, they educate them in how to go out into the world, which they probably indoctrinate them with climate change and all these other issues that are going on. And they go and they inject them into the cabinets of the nations, and they actually work themselves through the political system, get themselves elected, because the people are easily manipulated to choose only one option or the other, right? It's so funny, right? How they've simplified people to choosing something. If they don't like it, then they'll go with the other side. And then if they like that side, if they don't like that side, then they naturally will have to pick the other side. There's only bipartisan. It's not like 5 or 6 different things. It's one or the other. It's black or white. And I'm not talking about skin color. I'm just talking about that they leave a duality there, because that's how they can easily put into a position of power by the choice of the people. And I think that democracy, yeah, it's something that the people see as a fair way to choose leaders. But I see it as that's the easiest way to manipulate people, is to give them two choices, and depending on their preference or their opinions of things.
yeah, and again, while we're talking about who's going to be the attorney general, that doesn't matter. What matters is who's going to be the state's attorney generals. Nobody's ever talking about those, right? And those are those are probably more important. And those are the ones who are providing. By the way, this isn't just the federal government. This is state government stuff as well. They have state parks that protect these crazy things too. And so the federal government and the state governments are working together hand in hand on this stuff. And so while we're all concerned about attorney general stuff, the real concern, the other concern should be the state's attorneys, who are typically funded by radicals, right? And again, to me, man, a lot of this stuff is this all theater, just to kind of get us off of our path back to God. Like they're detaching us from source, right? They're all this other stuff, all these little rabbit holes, underground bases, paranormal, all this stuff, conspiracy, everything is designed to get you off your path to God, which I think is the ultimate conspiracy, is to keep you far away from God, from knowing light and love, because they want to keep us in that low vibrational state, man. And again, there's places like there's a place called have you ever heard of the Black Pyramid in Alaska? A lot of people are familiar with
Yes.
it.
Yes.
I was introduced to it by, I believe, like Ancient Aliens or somewhere like that. And then I saw another documentary on it on, I believe, like the History Channel. It was like Aliens in Alaska or something like that. And it's essentially a black stone pyramid that's bigger than Giza, that is in the Denali area, Denali Mountains of Alaska, in what's called the Alaska Triangle. And the Denali fault line runs straight through there. And you can see that a lot. And this is why I was saying the Department of Energy and Department of Interior and all that stuff is very important, because they know all of these bases, all of these things are built near fault lines and extinct volcanoes and stuff. And there's a reason for that. And I've talked about this before with telluric energies coming from volcanic regions and coming from faults and fissures and stuff like that. And they know, so they put their bases near places like that so they can generate enough energy to power these UFOs and to power all these consciousness research, and to also access beyond the material. They trying to access into the ethereal. And when you look at stuff like, and I don't know, I'm kind of jumping all over the place here, and it's just a word salad of stuff, but there's a telescope called the Lucifer telescope, and they changed the name to Lucy because everybody's like, why would you call it Lucifer? How that typically works is, like I told you, if we're living in this visible light and perfect temperature, they live in the dark, cold, freezing infrared, right? In order to see into that world, they do what's called a reverse prism. They cool down the telescope so they can see into that world. So when they're looking into space, I don't think that they're looking into outer space. I think that they're looking at the space around us that we can't see, the imperceivable space, that's just around us. Like it's insane to me to think that people, can take pictures, a million miles away on some flying telescope or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
Like to believe that is because I'm a photographer, man, and we can't even get cell phone reception in some areas and all this other stuff, but we can call the moon and we can do all this other. I don't want to get conspiratorial with all that stuff and take people on another adventure here, but I think that they're trying to communicate on a regular basis. There's this thing that happened right before 9/11 in February of 2001, and I have the document on it still. And I think you can find it online still, but if you Google like FCC 33 gigahertz signal, you can read through the document yourself if you find it. And essentially what that says is it gives the FCC went to the government, to Congress, and they said, we need control of the 33 gigahertz signal. The 33 gigahertz signal is Earth to space communications. And I think that that's what they were doing. They're communicating with space, but they're not communicating with deep space. They're communicating with the space that's around us that we can't see, because we're the 0.0035% of the spiritual world. We are in God's light. That takes up 0.0035% of 100% of the spiritual world. So that means that 99.965% is spiritual. We can't see it. It's paranormal. It's out there around us that we can't see. And this is where they come from. And I mentioned that book by the Masters of the Universe book, right, with He-Man. And they talk about the horde. Well, in the Bible, they talk about the horde as well. They talk about Gog and Magog, and how if you look at the Hebrew translation of Gog, it means roof, and Magog means of the roof. Now, I know there's two different versions in the Bible, or two different verses in the Bible. But if you look at Gog and Magog as a translation of roof and of the roof, then what we're talking about is them. The roof is the firmament, and of the roof, or beyond the roof, would be the ethereal. And the weird thing about it is, like I said, with that He-Man book, they talk about the exact same thing. This is where Hordak lives. Hordak is in charge of the horde, right? He lives in Etheria, which is beyond the firmament. And it even has a firmament, and it even has plasma ships and everything in this book, which is really cool. I did an episode on it a while back in like December of last year. I probably wasn't good at talking about it then, but it was pretty prophetic, I think. It, kind of chronicling. We've talked about Lord of the Rings before. It's similar, where it kind of chronicles everything that's going on with us right now. The Bible does that too, and it's better at doing that than all these other things. But these other stories, I feel like, were ways for people to get the information out without being criticized at the time in the 80s or in the 40s or in the 30s or whenever these things were written. And so, yeah, I didn't mean to kind of carry on there.
No. I mean, the second heaven is something I've talked about even on the last podcast that's actually airing tonight. So it'd be pretty cool for everyone to tune into that. But Craig Hunt, he's a buddy of mine. He really does he stretches a lot with some of the theological perspectives he gets into, and pertaining to the second heaven. He's talking about that there's a lot of heavenly hosts that the Bible kind of talks about. And I think that second heaven may be that area that is within the roof, if that makes sense. Not on top of the roof, but it's within that space. And what's funny too, and how we dictate distances and how we look at things in the sky above us is we coordinate everything to like where we are. And a lot of that's done through like spectroscopy and a bunch of, and measuring light. And so how we measure the light is in one direction, but then I'll look up something as pertaining to, can we really get a good uh idea of how far something is away from us if we are measuring the light in one direction? And Google will tell you like no, measuring the light in one direction, you can't actually get a good understanding of how far it is away from you. So I think that with science today, I still think a lot of things are theorized. I think a lot of things are based off of certain foundational theories, which do make sense. Don't get me wrong, but I think I think we think we know. I think we think we know what's above us, but continuously we're getting proven not wrong, but we're being shown that we may not have something fully figured out. If that makes any sense. Especially when the James Webb Telescope went out there, took pictures, and actually had certain galaxies that shouldn't be formed the way that they are, compared to how the the idea of time, which is distance, right, away from the beginning of this Big Bang, that's how time is dictated, that they shouldn't have been developed how they are. So now it seemed to be that the science industry or that community has to maybe or rethink how they've had this understanding of the second heaven. And you were talking about the Lucifer telescope, right? That believe it's on Mount Graham, and there's another few other telescopes that are up there. I think there's a radio telescope and all kinds of stuff. But they bring people out there, part of colleges and internships that go up there. First, a Jesuit owned compound, by the way. And it's very interesting because there's only certain areas you can go, and I'm getting some of this information and giving it to the audience from a book that I've read called Exo Vaticana, and I have the book right back there, and it's very interesting how the Jesuits do look at these extraterrestrials, right? The term keeps changing because again, I don't think they have a full. I think a group of people do have a full understanding of what these things are, but to the world, I think the goalpost is constantly moving because they're slow dripping it, or they're slowly disclosing the idea of the true nature of these things. But anyways, these college groups would go and they would look through this, I think it's the LVAT or whatever it is, but they'd look through this telescope, which has a Lucifer device on it, which actually can see in the infrared spectrum. And
That's
they
what I was
see
saying.
things every day. They see things every day. They see things defying the laws of physics every day. And I think the Vatican is holding a lot of this information to themselves. I think they have a lot of other information that's underneath the Vatican as well, pertaining to maybe some wisdom of our history, and a lot of knowledge pertaining to the history that we're not taught, if that makes any sense. And I think that's because there's an event that's supposed to come in the future where they want the narrative to be controlled to the population, so that they can hold certain parts of the narrative to themselves to make themselves, I'm talking about the elites, be in that hierarchy system, be in that Elysium category for when these things do happen, so that they're not a
Right.
part of the people that will be ruled by this mystery Babylon or Babylon the Great, right? Like there's these concepts in Revelation where it does talk about Babylon. And when you look at Babylon, you go back to the ancient source, there was a god of Babylon. It was Marduk, right? Marduk has a lot of connections with Dagon. Dagon being like this fish god, right? This whole idea, it's Baal, Moloch. It's the same thing, just repackaged and repurposed in each civilization that it enters into. But it's this ancient god that I feel will come back one day, or at least claim himself to be this Babylon god, in the end times. But then there's like there's a subsection of him, which are the pantheon of gods. Because when you think of like Mount Olympus, like Zeus runs Mount Olympus, but he's got a bunch of other gods that are there a part of that whole network with him.
Yeah,
And
they're
that's
like
the
the
whole idea. Like that's why Satan, that's why it says that this antichrist figure in the Bible will call himself God in the temple of God, you know? So and it's in a temple of God, but it's a whole new religion, and temples have had many gods. So it's just all kind of interesting, man.
Yeah, but you don't need a temple for God, in my opinion, right? It's like the only temple
Right.
for God you need is your body. Your
Amen.
this
Yeah,
is your
yeah.
temple, right? It's like God is within you. You don't have to go through a guy with robes and throwing smoke around, whatever the heck a lot of these different religions do. You don't have to pray to statues and all this other stuff. You can access God directly. You have a direct link to Him, and that's what's been taken from us. That's the idea that's been removed from our psyche. and they continuously do it. I don't know if you remember a few years ago, back in like 2014, they took Jesus, the name Jesus, off of Wikipedia. They took it off. They tried to take it off the internet, but the collective was like, "What are you doing?" And it was an uproar, and they put Jesus back. I'm not even kidding about that. That's not a misremembering. They literally, if you Googled Jesus, you didn't even get the Wikipedia article on him. You got all these other different things. And so I think that should tell you a lot right there. Why would they take Christ out of Christmas, right? Why would they X Christ out of Christmas and all that stuff? And dude, you can see it, man, when you start to say the name of Christ around people who are sort of possessed by demons. You're probably seeing a lot of videos online. I saw it in a video with Danny Jones with some guy, and they were watching like a Wes Huff interview, and Wes Huff said
Yeah.
Jesus, and then that guy kind of started freaking out. You see that kind of stuff all the time. Anytime you mention the name of Jesus, and these people look like they're fighting that demon inside of their body.
Yeah, you could see it, man. Well, how
Yeah.
about just even with the Masons, right? The Freemasons. It wasn't until, at one point Jesus was the god of Freemasonry, right? But I'm still not saying, when I say that, I'm not saying that Freemasonry was a good thing already. But with the name changing idea, they changed that name from Jesus to the Grand Architect through the Anderson Constitution, right? Like they refabricated what who their real God really is, and I think they rebranded it because it's just in that time that's how things are being played out. And this whole grand architect is supposed to be this idea of this universal God, which Freemasonry, Catholicism, Islam, and all the other religions, they all have this connection where it's this monotheistic God. But I think when the times do come, when Antichrist does, put feet on the earth, that this is where he'll combine all of the religions together, right? Through this theosophy idea, right? To where everyone was looking at the elephant in the room, but just from a different angle. And he's going to come here and actually show people, the false truth of all of that. And I think that's where Christians at some point will be like, no, this is what our book has been talking about the whole time. In contrary to that, all the other religions have been talking about their Messiah coming in this form of a peace giver and an authoritative king that's to rule the earth. But that's not the real God. The real God came to die for man's sin, which in the end shows the greatest love. It shows, it's like that verse where God says the greatest love you can show someone is, by laying your life down for your brother. So God showed us the greatest amount of love that he has for his creation by giving himself to the cross and dying for our problem, and us, falling for that deception to bring sin into the earth. It's, he took he was the fall guy for our own mistake, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I had Topher Gardner on my show, and he was talking about how when Salvador Dali has a painting called the Tesseract, or something along those lines, where it looks like Christ emerging from a cross that looked like it was a box. And I think that he had a pretty interesting take on it, and I think he's right, where Christ was trying to teach us how to escape that box, how to escape that cube, that black cube of Saturn that rules this world, because he's saying that the black cube of Saturn, that is the material, and Christ died for our sins to escape, to show us that we can escape the material, and that our bodies are just temporary. Our real bodies are eternal, and or of the spirit. And I think that was a good analogy. But I think all these things, man, and this whole world is run by the devil. I mean, there's tons of verses in the Bible that talks about this. I did a show about Charlie Kirk the other day. I ended up taking it off, and it wasn't because I cried during the episode, right? And I don't normally cry, and I didn't take it off because of the message. I took it off because I didn't want people to think that I'm crying as a show. You know what I mean? I wanted people to, and plus I didn't want to get involved with all that. I didn't want to get involved with the politics of everything, because I think that's the whole trap of it. is to get us in an argument, getting us fighting about stuff like that. So I ended up taking the episode off, but the message was just that. It was like the message of like the devil rules this world. He's going to continue to keep us in this box, and we have to learn to escape that matrix and sort of um, realize that the material doesn't matter. That's why it's all this talk about, don't store up your treasures on earth and all this other stuff. If you have, those who are given, much is expected, right? If you have a lot, if you're given a lot, it's almost a test to give it away and to provide. Like I heard Cat Williams say this. He said, God only blesses those who he knows will bless others. And I think that's true. I think that when people are given a lot, whether that's money or whatever, if they're building bunkers and they're trying to build breakaway civilizations and all this stuff, those are the people who will perish in the end. Those are the people who are of the devil. Because just like you said, and you're a firefighter, you will lay down your life. I was in the military. I will lay down my life for anybody when I was in the military, and I'll still do it for my family. I'll still do it for my friends. I'll probably lay down my life for just about anybody, to be honest with you. I've done it before. I've ran out in the middle of the road, try to save turtles. I've ran out in the road to save kids before. I've done all kind of things, but that's that's God's people, right? That's not storing up your treasures on earth. That's not trying to build bunkers and put all these food supplies and all this stuff aside to have so that when other people are struggling, they got plenty. Like that's not of God. That's not of. So anybody who's working against or who's doing that, who's storing up their treasures on earth, who's saving all their money and all this other stuff. I think those are the ones who won't make it out of old earth. They won't make it into the
they
new
think
earth.
they think they're gonna
You know?
survive. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
But with what you're saying, man, it's really resonating on me because there was an incident that happened last shift 2 days ago. Well, probably like 36 hours ago, and there was a lady the call came out as a vehicle versus pedestrian. There was like 5 units getting responded to the scene. We get on scene, and it was just a lady on the side of the road, kind of like sitting down. PD was there on scene. And so I'm blocking the roadway. Ambulance pulls in front. We get out. We hop out. We're assessing and investigating the situation. And the lady didn't actually get hit by a car, but she was a homeless lady. And so what was her home or her purse, right? Everything that is very valuable to her in her life got destroyed. And it was a little tiny, almost like the little beach carts that you would pull everything that you would take to a beach, right? It's got the wheels and everything, and it got destroyed. And so when I was looking at that, her life was impacted. Her whole home, in a way, got taken out almost like by a tornado, right? For example. But when I saw that, I felt very sad. And she should have went to she didn't want to go to the hospital at first, but we were kind of encouraging her to go because number one, she doesn't seem to be like she's in the best health at her age and all that kind of stuff, just from the circumstances of living outdoors, right? But also, she was a Christian lady, and she was talking about Jesus, talking about God, and all this stuff. And um, it was late at night, and we get her in the back of the ambulance. We're talking, blah blah blah. So she makes the decision to go to the hospital, and she's like, "Please, can you take all my stuff with us?" And we can't put that stuff into the ambulance because it's unfastened objects in the back of an ambulance that could be projectiles in case you get into an accident. And I've been in an ambulance accident, and I'm telling you right now, everything in the back gets thrown up and thrown out. It's kind of crazy. So much kinetic energy in those things. So we put her stuff and her belongings, which are in plastic bags, right? That's kind of like how these people end up carrying their things at the end of the day. So we put it in a back of a police cruiser, and the police was going to go and take it to the hospital with her. But then again, she still doesn't have the cart. And I saw how it was just making her feel, and like her world was, really crumbling. And sorry, those are my dogs. Love my dogs, but hate them at the same time.
I was like, I don't have dogs. Wait a minute.
Yeah. But yep, that's Maverick and Goose, everybody. And we named them after Top Gun. So I looked across the street, and there was a Walmart, and I was like, you know what? Everybody get in the engine. We cleared the scene. Ambulance was transporting her to the hospital. I pulled in a Walmart, bought her the same exact Ozark trolley, right? And I said, "Hey, we're gonna go to the hospital, and we're gonna bring this right to her, right into the hospital room." I pulled the engine into the hospital, walked right through the ER, went into the room. Box was, all taped up, and literally the look on her face was awesome, man. She was just like her world was just brought back together, and it was brand new and all this. And we ended up putting her belongings back in there for her. I prayed with her, and she shared a little gift of knowledge with us as well, pertaining to like fasting, which I was like, by the way, I've been thinking about fasting a lot more than I have been in the past 6 months or so. So it was like another confirmation for me. I was like, oh man, that's cool. And what she said really resonated with me. She goes, as soon as I walked in the room, she was just all jittery, all happy, thanked me. But then she goes, "Do you see what God does?" She goes, "Do you see what God does and how he works?" And I was like, "Yes, ma'am, I do, because it's God in me that was encouraging me to go do what I just did. I bought this for you." And I didn't tell her I bought it for her. I'm not going to boast like that. I'm just going to do the work that I was called to do, and that's it, and walk away from it. And it was going on to what you were saying about blessings, and blessing other people to be blessed. And I just feel like that is kind of how this currency of God works through each and every one of us.
Yeah, and I had to look up the Bible verse just now because it says in Hebrews 13:2, to essentially show hospitality to strangers, because you never know if you're entertaining an angel, right? And I think that those are the little tests that every day that God, bestows on us to see that we are doing right by Him, and that we are kind of remembering that that's what our purpose is. It's not to be selfish and all this other stuff and create all these different things. I mean, we were already given enough. Why would they need to create military underground military bases and have advanced systems of flying and weaponry and all that stuff? Do we need it? No. All we need is we have everything that we've ever needed. God gave it all to us. We have food, an abundance of food. We have an abundance of water and everything. We don't have to continue sucking up all the resources or storing them away or building underground bases to try to create more weapons of war or whatever the heck they're trying to do, or working with fallen angels or whatever. Like, we have everything we need. Our bodies are perfect as they are. We don't need any, in my opinion, we don't need any medicines, or we don't need any, just like you said, fasting is a good way to do it. We have everything we need. And so all these people, in my opinion, are hiding from the wrath of God in a way. They're trying everything they can to get off of this earth, allegedly, right? Breakaway civilization, get underneath the earth. But the only thing they're running from is God. Because if you are doing everything that you're supposed to do, then you're ready. I'm ready, right? I mean, if something happened tomorrow, it's terrifying to know that something could happen. But if it did, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to, you know,
Yeah,
go back
yeah,
to
yeah.
heaven. I think that that's where I'll go. I'm not perfect. I do a lot of bad things still. I still drink and cuss and all these other different things. I'm not perfect, but I do think that my intentions are always good. My heart is always in the right place, and I will always give. Like, that's the first thought if I have any money. My mom's the same way. I was just telling my aunt the other day, I said, if my mom had $1 million, she would be broke because she would give it to everybody. She would be giving it to everybody. But I think that that's the way you're supposed to do it. That's part of the test of this earth.
Yeah, yeah, man.
Because it's not of the material, man. It's about touching people on a different level. It's reaching into their soul and resonating with them on a level of love. I mean, dude, when you do something nice for people, you feel it deeper than anything you've ever felt. And when somebody does something nice for you, it's like, God, that was so nice. Because they're hitting a level that's not material. They're hitting the soul. They're hitting your spirit, you know?
Mhm.
And that's why, that's why you can hear a song, because music can speak to you in ways that, or sound can speak to you in ways that nothing on earth, nothing else on earth can. It can resonate in a way that makes you cry all of a sudden. I mean, like when I recorded that episode of Charlie Kirk, I wasn't crying about the death of Charlie Kirk. I'm sure Charlie's going to go to heaven. He's going to be just fine, right? But what I was upset about was that his kids didn't won't have access to their dad anymore. So it's going to be a big part of their world that they won't have access to. And so it resonated with me because I have kids, and but again, I was trying to say in that message that he died for what he believed in. He died for a cause, and there's only and he tried. I think he was trying to help others, right? Get closer to God. I don't think he was trying to be anything that they try to paint
Right.
him as. So, not to make that again, and not to make this a political thing, but I think that when you live for others, you're going to be just fine. It just sucks that his kids are going to be without a dad, but I hope that they know that he did a good thing. You know what I mean? So,
Right, right, man, right. And it's funny, you talked about that. Everything's provided for us, right? That God
yeah.
created this whole world as an ecosystem, right? Everything sustains each other itself, based off of the different systems that are here. And I think that's why the devil and these elitists and these merchants, they've taken over these systems to now create a monetary system out of it to where now it functions off money, and they want to make money off of these things that are already here provided for us. And really, the money is a fictitious thing. Take it all away. And if we all just work with each other, it would still be here. Like the money is literally a fictitious thing. Everything would still be here. But if our currency was doing it out of the goodness of our hearts, then to make this civilization and the humanity of the people thrive off of what we have, it would all still completely work. But it's greed, it's envy, it's the love for money, right? Especially the Bible talks about the love of money being the root of all evil. It's not money itself, but it's the love of money. And it's real quick too, like talking about money and food and all this stuff. Jesus Christ is the bread of life, right? And so and this is in all of the gospels. And I think it's a very important message because at the end of the day, we may not have some of these things. We may not have food, we may not have the water, we may not have all of the luxuries of these things that we can access each and every day, but we have Jesus Christ that we could bring into our hearts, and we could accept. And that's something that no one can take away from us, man. I think it's really what can change the progression of humanity and the future of humanity if everyone does come to the faith of this of this idea of the truth, man. And so, but brother, I love doing shows with you, man, because I love how sometimes we get into the serious stuff, we bounce around a little bit, but we make connections back to the general topic, and then we get into the real life stuff. We get into the real talk, man. And so, but we're approaching, our end here, which it sucks. No, don't leave me, Brad. But if you could, man, just here's a few minutes for the audience if you want to send a good message out there, and we'll come to a close.
I think that we have hit on some pretty important topics, man. And what I mentioned earlier too, I believe I mentioned it. I can't remember if I did or not, but I was talking about how when you tell spirits to get out of your body, when you tell everybody has demons, I think, right? We all live with demons. And when you tell the demons to get out of your house, you got to put in your houses get in order. You have to fill your life with light, because Jesus said they will go and try to find rest, and they won't find rest, and then they'll come back. But you have to fill your life with light. You have to fill your life with the Holy Spirit, with Christ, with love. Otherwise, they're going to take back over, and it's going to be worse. So, don't. I know there's a lot of propaganda about end of the world stuff. It always feels like that. It always feels like there's something bad's going to happen. But if you go outside and you look around, it's a beautiful day outside, right? The sun's shining. You have food, you have water, you have all your basic needs are met. Hopefully, don't believe the propaganda. If you turn on the media, it's going to look like the sky is falling. But the word government means to steer minds, and media is just the medium by which they do that, by which they steer minds. So don't believe what you see on TV. Believe what you see with your heart. How do you interact with people on a daily basis? That kind of stuff. Because you can become hardened by the world. I remember one time I stopped and I saw this man. He was homeless. He was kind of like an alcoholic, I think, more than homeless. But I said, "Hey man, can I buy you something real quick from KFC?" And he goes, "Yeah, yeah." And he said, "Can you get me this?" And I said, "Okay." So I went in there and they didn't have that thing he wanted, and I gave it to him, and he opened. He said, "Is this the 6-piece or whatever it was. I said, no, sir. All they had was, and he got mad at me and, started cussing at me and everything. So whenever I was trying to do something nice for somebody, it come back and bit me on the butt. And for me, it just felt like at that moment, it was like, it doesn't matter. Like, I realized that it doesn't matter. It's easy to get hardened by the world and say, I'll never help another homeless person. But like I said, with Hebrews 13:2, you never know if you're entertaining an angel. So I would make sure that you're always doing what you're supposed to do and always being willing to jump into the fire or to, jump into the water to save somebody who's drowning. That's what real toxic masculinity looks like. That's what real heroes look like. And I think that's what not to me, that's what real heroes looks like to God and to Jesus. So yeah, man, don't worry about anything. Don't store up your treasures on earth, all that good stuff. And don't worry about what these billionaires are doing. They only have their own self-interest in mind, and self is the cell for this reality that we live in. Like, don't be selfish, be selfless. And I think I'll just leave it there, man, because we've covered a lot of ground, but there are a lot of strange things going underneath the earth. There's a lot of strange things going underneath the water, in the mountainsides, even in volcanoes. You can see UFOs flying into volcanoes. So it makes you wonder what's really going on there, if it's like a smoke screen or something. I don't know. But overall, man, like I said, God is in control of everything. We don't know when the next cataclysm is going to come. We don't know when the end of the world is going to come. All I know is that I'll be ready to ascend to heaven, because hopefully I'm doing the right things. Like I said, I'm not perfect, but I'm sure that my heart's in the right place at least, right? It's like, I know what I feel in my heart and it's the right thing. So, but yeah, if you guys want, if you enjoy this content, there's more content like this on my show. I don't quite go as deep and I don't quite talk as much on my own show, but I do have some pretty amazing guests like Stephen, like Gary Wayne, like all these other amazing people I've had on my show. And you can get a pretty good conversation in there. And I will add my 2 cents. And sometimes I get a little breathy and I go a little long, but mostly it's the same message. I didn't start my show to be an advocate for Christ and religion and all that stuff. I honestly just wanted to find community. But what I found instead was my love for Jesus along the way. And to me, it's like, okay, now the message is always talking about love and light and all this stuff. And also to shed the light on some of the dark stuff that people are doing. But again, don't get caught up too much in this stuff. Don't find yourself in one of these little whirlpools of energy, of paranormal or conspiracy or whatever. Remember that you have a family. When I get off here right now, I'm going to go kiss my little girl and, hug my son and tell him I love him and eat dinner with him and spend time with him. And I think that's what everybody should do. So, but yeah, guys, if you want to find me, again, you can find me at theawakenedpodcast.com. If you like the content, please give the show give the show a follow first, and then if you like what you hear, give the show a 5-star review, because that really helps the show grow. It helps us get around the algorithms. So yeah, I appreciate that. And Stephen, thank you for having me on the show, brother. I hate that I didn't provide as much details of the underground bases and the underground cities as I'd like to have, but sometimes the conversations just go wherever they go. That's what it
Exactly,
is.
man.
Yeah.
No, it's
So,
all good, man. And I'm sure we'll revisit some of the ideas too in the future. This isn't going to be the last time we get together. And folks, make sure just supporting our shows is the biggest thing to keep us not only going, but to keep us thriving as well. So, hey, bro, I appreciate you, man. And I'm excited to see what opportunities are going to open up in the future for us, because I know we're going to collab with a couple of other creators, right, down the road. And so I'll let my audience know that whenever that time comes around, because I think we still have to establish a name, right, or something like that. But I'm excited for everything, man, because I think not only are we growing in the faith, but I think that we're growing in knowledge, and we're just growing as a community. And really, at the end of the day, that's a big thing that matters, right? But I think the biggest thing is just putting your faith in Jesus Christ, and understanding that we're not good people at the end of the day. We can be good, but at the same time, our nature has been tainted a little bit. So we do need a savior. And so, brother, I thank you so much, man, and hope to revisit some, not only some of these topics we got into in the future, but other ones as well, man. So, but thank you so much, man. And I'm going to get ready to move over into a biblical hitman debrief. And thanks again, Brad Lail, everybody.
See you, buddy.
At Biblical Hitman Debrief. Let's go. Brad Lail, the Awakened podcast. Love that guy, man. So deep underground military bases, deep underground civilizations. What? It's wild, right? Yeah, I mean, there's so much more we could have got into, but I really like the way the conversation went. This episode is a banger, folks. Drop a comment down below what you thought about everything. And so just to kind of review some of the things we got into, man, I think a lot of our money, I think a lot of the monetary system, the way it's set up today, how the rules, the regulations, the Treasury Department, the International Monetary Fund, the central banking system, the Bank of International Settlements, why the banks have been created in the first place is to exploit the people, to get us to give them money that we're conditioned to believing that we owe them, but then that's how it's just a money making system. So some of this money too gets lost in the trail. It gets lost in the trail to where now where does it go? And I think it does go, and it does contribute to this idea of building deep underground military bases and deep underground civilizations and funding experiments and, experiments number one that are unethical completely to humanity, right? And we could see obviously some of the experiments that we know are true now since what was going on in 2019 and 2020, right? We saw where it broke out from when the town it was called was right next to a facility that was doing these experiments on uh, you know, how do I say this without getting censored? I hate censorship, but taking things on a microscopic level and manipulating them. And then all of a sudden they do tenfold of what they were supposed to do in the first place. This is unethical. There's a lot of things going on, and things on the micro level are not the only things that are being experimented on. I think that they're experimenting on bodies. I think they're trying to build bodies. Why do you think that the occult is so infatuated with the idea of homunculuses and succubuses and incubi and all these different kinds of things to where, why do you think the Frankenstein mythos, right, even exists? There are mad scientists out there, folks, that are doing these things behind the scenes for some agenda down the road. And I think it all pertains to the fallen angel agenda. I think it all pertains to the workers of darkness, the principalities, the powers, the evil places, and in these high areas of ranks, or just in the command structure in general of our world. And there's an end goal to it. And I think that end goal is the last strike that they have, and that this will be the time when they do return. And who knows? I think this is something that may even lead to the Battle of Armageddon, maybe even things considering an army of Satan versus an army of Christ. And at the end of the day, this will be the final battle. And so, getting into it, folks, really every topic I cover in this podcast, I want to, in way, some shape or form, contribute to the story of Jesus Christ, right? And the story of the Gospels, and being saved, becoming one of the kingdom of God. And there's only one truth in this world, and a lot of people may disagree with where I come from with some of the things on this show. And this show does stretch you. It's meant to stretch you a little bit, because stretching prevents injury, folks. No, just but it's a part of really bringing on durability with our faith, I think. And so I always try to bring things back to Scripture and how Scripture dictates some of these ideas. And at the end of the day, the Genesis 6 event is something that's so crazy to wrap your mind around, but it's traced back throughout the civilizations and their writings, and how they definitely knew their history, right? And to that these sky people did kind of come down to earth and copulate with our creation. So I think that in the times coming in the future, maybe this, the seed of man will mingle with these things once again. And there is going to be this idea of iron and clay. And so there's a mixture of these kingdoms that are happening. And again, give me your thoughts, folks, in the comments, wherever you're at, Spotify, YouTube, wherever. Come support us on both things. Apple Podcasts everywhere. This is something that's helping the show thrive. There's a lot of money that goes into this show. I will say that. Unfortunately, everything is so crazy expensive. I was at the store today. Blueberries were $7 for a very small little carton, and I got to give my kid food at the end of the day. I'm not saying I'm doing this show for money to feed my kid, but I'm just saying in general, the things today are getting more and more expensive. The value of the dollar is decreasing each and every day. And I hope there's a big turnaround. I hope there's a revival when it comes to the monetary system. But unfortunately, I think that that's a part of the fallen angel plan as well, is to bring down this monetary system and to usher in a different one of their liking and one of their kind, one that will get along with the Babylonian system in the future, this mystery idea of Babylon and pertaining to the New World Order, one world government, currency, and religion. It's all got to come together. And we are seeing the step-by-step process of these things unfolding. Like, why do you think we went over DUMs, right? Deep underground military bases, and along with civilizations? We talk about this stuff because I think it pertains to that idea, that agenda of a new world order. And I'm going to scream from the mountaintops with this, because it's something that we need to really get a grip on, because it'll help our discernment throughout our reality for the future events that are coming. And so, but folks, hey, I appreciate you for tuning in. I love you. I really do. And the community that we're building here is incredible. All glory to the Father, all glory to Jesus Christ, all glory to the man who instilled in my heart to do this and to make me a part of something that's bigger than I thought it would even get to. And really, this is my appreciation to you folks. I can't display it any other way, and I love it. It's definitely a dopamine rush for me, and it's something that I'm continuously trying to get better at. I'm trying to get better guests, and I'm trying to put more puzzle pieces together, not only for myself but for you folks as well. But hey, if it's your first time you're returning and you've hung out with us this long, baby, smash that subscribe button, like the show, share it with your friends, get it out there, okay? Because it's not going to get it out there on its own. I need you. And so, but hey, if you're on the video side of things and you've supported us, come on over to the audio, and vice versa. On the audio platforms, we're on Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. While you're there, drop a 5-star review, because 5 stars only, folks. It's a 5-star show. Let's go. And drop a follow. Hit that notification bell. You'll be notified whenever we do drop episodes. I'm trying to stay on this schedule. It's a taxing schedule. I've been asking you folks for prayer. Right? You guys see me in the live chats asking for prayer, because my goodness, is it taking a lot out of me? But I will keep going. I am strong enough to keep going. And you folks definitely help give me some of that energy to come out here and to do this, because I love it now. I love it that I have a community I interact with all the time. This is great. The comments are awesome, because I enjoy it a lot. And so, definitely the currency of the platform is all of the things that I spit out here at the end. And so if you could help me out with all that, I'll be super grateful for it. Right. And, I'm praying for you folks too, that are a part of the community. I really am. I generalize it for everybody. And so if you folks could also pray for me as well, I would deeply, deeply appreciate it. But what a show. Thank you, Brad, for coming on. It was a lot of fun. Folks, if there's any guests or anyone that you would like to see on the show, please drop it in the comments and I will make note of it. I text myself all different kinds of things each and every day as reminders. So, but with all that said, love you. Going to see you next time.